Thank you so much, Elix, and thank you, Stephen. When he said I'm a force to be reckoned with, I'm like, yes, I am. Absolutely. Thank you all for coming tonight, really, truly, and honestly. I know it took something to be here, so I'm thrilled that you did come. And you know, I was thinking just now in the back, I'm thinking of somewhere I read that there are 3 fears that all human beings share. One is the fear of dying. One is the fear of being alone. And one is the fear of failure. And they also say public speaking, right? So here I am, and I can tell you my knees are shaking and my heart is racing, but it doesn't matter. I'm really committed to what I have to say tonight. So I'm going to work through the fear, okay? Yes. So I mentioned those things about our fears, and by the end of this evening, I want you walking out these doors knowing, number 1, we don't die. We don't. You, your personality, who you are, as you can tell by some of the great readings Stephen did, you will survive death. You will. We won't be able to see you, but you will survive. You'll never be alone. You may not know this right now, or you may, because I know Stephen brought in some family members and friends and things, but around all of you right now, you have guides, you have loved ones, you have people helping you out. Okay, so you'll never be alone. And failure is actually a good thing, because those of us who grow and learn, and when you even think back on your life about some of the failures you had, would you agree that without them happening the way they did, you wouldn't be where you are today, right? Okay. So, all that being said, let me tell you a little bit about me. Was I always an author? Absolutely not. I have a day job. My mom and I own a catering business, and we work with race car teams. So I'm a chef by trade, went to the Culinary Institute of America, got a job 30 years ago cooking for one race team, and it grew to many race teams. That's my job. I've also been a small business owner and just a regular old person who one day woke up in the late 90s with an incredible fear of dying. Have you ever looked at the stars and had that moment where you think, you know, who am I? And what is my life for? I had this panic attack that someday I would die, and hopefully not soon, but would Sandra go on? And for whatever reason, ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't go to bed at night. I would have panic attacks. And very secretly, I started to look, is there any proof of life after death? Now, you have to know something about me. I'm a force to be reckoned with, yes. And I'm also very opinionated, and I like to be right. So I would go into Barnes & Noble, say, and I'd see the New Age section. And I would think, oh, those poor people. You know, that stuff doesn't exist. People that see psychics and mediums, astrology, you gotta be kidding me, right? People need to get a life. None of that's real. So very, very opinionated. And the title of my book is We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death, because I didn't believe any of it. No way. No one could tell me that life after death is real. I grew up Catholic, and I had faith, but you know, I was one of those Easter and Christmas kind of Catholics. But anyways, this fear of dying was so intense that very secretly I started my journey. And my journey, oh my gosh, I've got some great things to tell you. But I'm going to just fast forward a little bit to tell you why, as scared as I am, and as much as I like people to like me, I was able to finally come out and tell people that I believe in life after death, I believe in psychics, I believe in mediums, I've had an astrology reading. You know, there's a whole unseen world that I've been able to prove for me that my goal is to show you. So backing up a little bit, I grew up with a pretty close family, and 30 years ago my dad had been diagnosed with cancer, and thankfully he survived. I have 3 siblings. Parents were divorced when I was 14, and on May 2010 my dad passed away. What had happened before that is he had, 5 months before, he had a tumor that broke apart part of his spine. And my dad was someone who, even at the age of 74, rode a bicycle 20 miles a day. My dad was just an awesome, awesome man. And remember now, as of this point, I had my information that life after death was real, but I never told anybody. Too afraid that people would think I was a lunatic, right? And there's no way I was going to go in the New Age section either. I did all my research on the internet. But over the course of 5 months, from when Dad got diagnosed to when the cancer ended up filling his body and he passed away, just it's the 6-year anniversary that we just had, it was a very, very tough time for me. Have you ever heard of families that fight when someone dies, right? Yeah, for those of you who can't see behind you, there's a lot of heads nodding. It was the weirdest thing. My siblings and I started fighting about things that didn't happen. Or I had one story and they had another. And we were fighting about Dad's care. And ultimately, not only did Dad die on May 10th, but I lost the 3 relationships with my siblings. They stopped talking to me. I was the only single child, and months before he died, I could relocate myself to Florida and be by his side, where they had families. That turned into Sandra wants Dad's money. Now, that may not be the way they remember it, but in my mind, that's how it sat. And the fights began, and I got to tell you, it was horrible. So when Dad passed, of course, there was, I don't want to say fighting about his stuff, because I just pulled away. I said, you guys divvy it up. I don't want anything to do with this. But not only did I lose my dad, and I tell you, those last 5 months of his life, I was right by his side, like right there to try to bring joy to his life when he was in the hospital and things. It was a very, very tough time. His funeral came, and to this day, there's a brother and sister that still haven't spoken with me. One of my sisters has, it's relationships back. But after Dad died, I hit an all-time low as a human being. I think many of us share a common bond, and we've lost a loved one, and we've experienced grief. And grief is what can take us to an event like this. Certainly there's entertainment. Steve's a pretty funny man. But grief pulls us together. I was not suicidal. However, I could understand that if anyone felt this pain, it would be so easy to just want to exit out of life. Many of you have experienced it. Grief sucks. So yes, I lost my dad, I lost my siblings, and I also lost being able to see my nieces and nephews. Very, very difficult time. Somehow, miraculously, I started thinking, what is grief and why does it have to hurt so bad? And very secretly, again, and I think it was just to nurture myself, I wanted to find something that would ease my pain. And I started digging, and I'm sure many people have heard the different stages of dying or stages of grief, and there's depression and anger and bargaining and acceptance, and there's so many sub ones too, like there's shock, and anger is huge. Anybody lose a loved one and you are pissed off, right? Anger is very real. So I wanted to know why though, why? And why? Like I remember one conversation with my sister, and she's saying one thing that I said, and I said, I never said that. She, yes, you did. And no, I didn't, and that caused a whole fight. Well, surprisingly enough, when I dug far enough, to get my words right, I actually found that while we're grieving, our brain chemistry changes. We lose some healthy neurotransmitters that control our sleep, control our mood, control our perception, and control our communication centers. So why is this important to us? Well, that explains the fights. No wonder. If you can imagine a healthy brain has 100% of these healthy neurotransmitters and chemicals going on, and then you grieve, you might have only 10% of them. So that explains the anger. That explains the sadness, the sleepless nights, or too much sleep. But when that happened, it was like a light bulb went off in my head that oh, okay, this is starting to make sense. And I even found out that when we love someone, love feels good, right? And the more we love, though, here's the thing, is the more it hurts when we lose a loved one. This might sound kind of crude, but I'm going to risk it anyways. If you can imagine someone who's got a drug or alcohol dependency, and you can just imagine what's happening in their brain, and somebody takes away their substance. Can you imagine that person that's in withdrawal? I mean, they're suffering, right? Well, our human body is doing the same thing when we grieve. When we lose someone we love, we are not ourselves, and it's awful. I mean, it's really awful. So I ask, if you know someone who's grieving, or even yourself, be really gentle. You're going through that withdrawal phase. And bottom line is, it gave me a huge amount of compassion for myself, my dad, my siblings, and it gave me a whole understanding of the world of grief. So something I did, because I did find some things that helped lessen the pain, is I decided to record all the things I found out about. So I recorded this audio called How to Survive Grief. I bought myself the domain name survivegrief.com, and I said, I'm just going to put it here for free. People can download it, have it, it helped me, there you go. Well, I checked on my website after a couple months, and 3,000 people in 15 countries had heard it. That's big news, seeing as I only posted 5 Facebook posts about it. And back in the day, I had about 300 friends. It went, not viral, but it got pretty busy. Then what happened is started getting emails from people. Emails that said, before my dad died, I had all my siblings listen to your audio, and we were able to get through the will without fighting, because we knew what we were prone to do. I thought, wow. And then I got another email from somebody in Europe, just like how much the tools, the steps that I have really eased her pain and helped her through. I thought, wow. And then I started getting emails about, I chose not to commit suicide because of your words. Get enough of those, and it's like I ended up feeling like I had a moral responsibility to get this information out. Now, I'm a pretty fun-loving person. You know, I love to laugh, love to have fun. I see many of you with a glass of wine. I'd love to be drinking it with you. And I just had this brain phase, but that's okay. I'll just keep talking. Where was I? CD, yes. Oh, yes, the moral responsibility. Well, it's hard. I got a camera on me, bunch of people, knees are still shaking. I'm doing a little better. But what I decided to do with my moral responsibility is I thought, wow, I should write a book. Because nobody's going to be looking for a grief book. Very few people look for grief. I thought, geez, Sandra, if you could have the guts to tell people your life after death story, title the book, We Don't Die. How's that for a grabber, right? And tell people my story of why I believe in life after death. Tell them my very personal journey of the fear I had to the things that made me believe it's real. Chapter 10 is that grief information. Because like it or not, folks, even if people are looking for proof of life after death, they're gonna learn about grief. Ha-ha. And also, just so you know, this is the grief CD. And I'm selling them for $5, but if you know that there's somebody in your life that's grieving and you want to have one, I'll give you one. See me at the end, okay? It's still at survivegrief.com. But then, who I am, that fun-loving person, I'm about living life. I'm about each and every single one of us knowing that beyond we don't die, we're here, I don't know if you want to say for a reason, but every one of our lives are important. We're all people that have dreams and aspirations, and I want everybody to play full out and get their money's worth out of life. That's what I say. So okay, I said enough about grief, right? Now let me just bring it right back up and tell you about life after death. One of the first things that happened to me on my journey is I got to see a medium do a stage show. Now you got to know, I went for fun because I don't believe in that stuff. However, the medium was so good and so specific that I ended up, you know me on the internet, and I flew to Laguna Beach, California, and took a course with Doreen Virtue. Oh, some people have heard of Doreen Virtue. She's pretty famous. She had a very expensive course, one that I couldn't afford, but we got MasterCard. And she promised, it was a class in mediumship. She promised, if you come to this course, you are somebody who can accurately see the deceased people around others. Now, back in those days, I had that fear of dying, okay? So as much as skeptic Sandra didn't want to believe, that fear was saying, you got to go see, because maybe, just maybe, you can sleep at night. So I'm going to just tell you one story that happened that weekend that just opened my eyes. Mediumship is something that, I kind of believed it existed, but if it did, it would certainly be for other people, not for me. Right? I'm a nobody. I'm just me. I'm not gifted. And there were only about 20 people in our group, and she had everybody take a partner, somebody you didn't know. I was traveling alone, so I didn't know anybody. So I said to this lady, I said, would you be my partner? And she says, okay, all right. And so the homework was just sit knee to knee, sit real close, hold hands, close your eyes, imagine there's a big white light of energy around you. Imagine your hearts are connecting and you really love this person. Now she says, we're not really going to be mediums right now. I'm just going to show you how it's done. So don't even worry that you have to try to see dead people. You don't. She said, I just want you to play with your imagination. Okay. So she said, somebody go first, somebody be A and somebody be B. And I'm like, well, if I just have to use my imagination, I can do that. So I close my eyes, and as I'm listening, she says, okay, now you're gonna see, and just invent somebody standing behind your partner. And just tell the story. Well, would it be a father, a grandfather? Would it be on the mom's side, dad's side? Just make somebody up. If you see any facial descriptions, if you hear any messages, just make something up and tell your partner. Now, I'm very creative. Like I said, I'm a chef. I can cook like nobody's business. And I cook for 800 to 1,000 people at a time. So, I cook some massive amounts of food. So, basically, I'm paired up with this woman. My eyes are closed. And I said, okay, and I'm inventing this. Remember, I am inventing this with my imagination. I said, I'm seeing a man standing behind you. And my eyes are closed, too. I said, he's a grandfather on your mom's side. I said, I see a fishing boat, and I'm feeling Denmark. He was a fisherman in Denmark. I hear the name Jan. I see a big gap between his front teeth, the guy I'm making up. And he died of lung cancer. My eyes are closed, and I'm just rattling off. And I said, and, he was a real tough dad, and he never told your mom, I love you. So I opened my eyes like, okay, it's your turn. And there are just streams of tears going down her face. Her grandfather was Jan from Denmark. He died of lung cancer, a big smoker, worked on the fishing boat, and I described him perfectly. And then she turned to me, she did the same thing to me. She told me about my grandfather with his cane. His name was John. He had a big German shepherd. I tell you what, my life was changed. Now, I wish I could say I went on to be a medium and I went on to do this, but so much that weekend I was wrong. You know how frustrating that is? Because I got a vivid imagination. So I'd work with somebody, I'd tell them, like, nope. No. And I'm like, okay. So I went home and I'm thinking, well, that was a great experience for me. It really rested my mind that life after death is real. But then what started happening is I'd meet people and they lost a loved one, right? I'd sit next to somebody on the airplane, and they just come in from a funeral, they lost their brother or their child, and I was too afraid to tell them about my experience. So then I start thinking, I got this moral responsibility now of helping people, but I can't just go what's in my mind. What else is there? So I have to tell you, I started studying many, many things. You hear of near-death experiences? Anybody? Okay. Right before we die, they say that we have a life review, and I don't even know how many documented cases of near-death experiences there are. There's more than 500,000. And I think only 10% of people that die and come back have them. So, but there's a lot of stories about them. And as fascinating as they were, the skeptical Sandra says, yeah, but that's just a normal part of dying. You see a bright light and maybe you relive your past. You can't tell me that means that life after death is real. Until I met one Dr. Kenneth Ring, who only studied the near-death experiences of blind people that never had vision. And guess what? When they flatlined, they rose above their body and they could see. Throughout his books, There are documented cases. And I mean, I even just think of the one lady who could see her husband talking to the doctor. The doctor drops his pen. The husband picks it up and notices that he's got a blue sock and a purple sock, right? So now she's flatlined, she's blind, and she sees this. Come to find out that all happened just that way. You heard Elix mention that I have a radio show now. If you go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com, I have almost 100 episodes that I interview people about why they believe in life after death. I've had a ton of people that have had near-death experiences. I've had mediums on. Stephen's been my guest, Stephen Masick, a fabulous medium. I've had people that work for hospice that are with loved ones. And you know what happens the very last moments before people pass away? You're nodding your head. Your loved ones come to take you to the other side. No one dies alone. No one. No one. There was even one man that I talked to whose father was in a coma, and just before, he was in a coma for several weeks, and he woke up 1 week short of Christmas, opens his eyes, and he's looking into heaven. And, you know, all the kids were, you know, he's tied up to all these tubes and things, and they're like, Dad, what do you see? And he says, oh, it's beautiful over there. And there's Bob, and there's Sally, and, well, Bob and Sally had died while the man was in the coma, and no one had ever told him that Bob and Sally died. He could see them. And it was just a very sweet story. He lived a week later. I mean, he lived just one more week, but before he died, Jesus told him to do your favorite things because you won't have the same body. You won't experience things the same way. So he wanted a hot fudge sundae, a cherry pie. He wanted to be dressed up, and he wanted to see a football game. And then it was, I think, New Year's Eve that he passed away. Great stories. One more thing about the near-death experience, because it may help all of us in living. There is something called a life review. Have you heard that? Life review. Well, there is no one saying, heaven for you, oh, hell for you. No, we judge ourselves. We look from the perspective of the other people. So if you were, or me, were mean to somebody, you actually experience what it was like being in their shoes, the impact you had on them. And that's kind of scary, but it's also kind of cool, because for me, I don't want to relive some experiences. So every so often I want to stretch the truth, lie, you know. But I think, if I have to relive this, better tell the truth. But then here's another thing. You get to see the good that you did. You get to experience it from the other person's point of view. And not just that, you get to see the ripple effect it had. So teachers, when you change a child's life in school, you get to see the ripple effect where it goes. I think that's pretty cool. Here's some other things about life after death. There is a woman that I met who lives in Massachusetts, and she is what's called the spirit artist. And she recently retired due to some health reasons. Her name is Rita Berkowitz. She is a minister in spiritualism. Have you ever heard of spiritualism? Yeah, spiritualism is a very great service, church service. It's an actual religion. It's been around, I think, since 1848. A lot of Christian-based philosophy. But at the end of every service, the minister is also a medium. And he or she will go through the audience and tell you who your deceased loved one is. So if that's something that interests you, the spiritualism, you don't have to join it. You can just go. But they're really great to go to because, you know, my grandfather had come through once, and I brought a friend, and he got a great message from his mom. Anyways, really great. But this Reverend Rita was a minister for spiritualism, and she's known as the spirit artist. So thespiritartist.com, if you can remember that, has pictures. Reverend Rita does very much like what Stephen does, has private readings, but not only sees the person in her mind's eye and tells you about them, but she draws pictures. She'll draw portraits of them. So on her website are tons of pictures of the person as they actually lived and of Reverend Rita's drawings, and they're the same people. And she did it for 30 years. And there's lots of other spirit artists, and I'm on the hunt to get more of them. What else can I tell you? There's something called electronic voice phenomena. Anybody hear that? EVP? Any paranormal people? Yeah, all right. Okay, so I heard enough great evidence for myself at this point to know that life after death is real. However, again, the fear was still too big. So I had gone to a spiritualist church, and instead of having a medium reading, the people that came out was a husband and wife team. The wife was a minister and the husband was a scientist. And he says, I didn't believe in any of this life after death stuff because it really can't be proved. He says, until I found out about electronic voice phenomena. Now, we've heard that we're all made of energy, right? Down to our core. We are energy. We're vibrating things. Even if you look at the table, right, or the chair that you're sitting on, if you break it down into molecules and then into atoms, and say we invented this really teeny tiny camera, and if we put it inside one of those atoms, do you know what it would film? Nothing. All anything is this vibrating matter. Okay, so sound, like this sound right here, is just vibrating somehow to get to your ears. Okay, and the light, this is all vibrations. So what's behind electronic voice phenomena is that our loved ones in the spirit world can manipulate sound so that if you use a tape recorder and you record, say, the sound of the rain, and you play it back, there'll be a voice on it. Now, everything I did up to this point I thought was great, but this was crazy. I mean, this was really kind of crazy. But I decided to buy this book called There is No Death and There Are No Dead by Tom and Lisa Butler, who were at one time ministers of the spiritualist faith. And I read the book and I bought my tape recorder and I tried to record an EVP. And guess what happened? I scared the heck out of myself. I thought, if somebody starts talking to me, like, I can't handle that. I mean, I remember being a kid in 8th grade, we'd play the records backwards. And I thought, this devil's work for sure. So I had one weekend free back in October 2005. And, Stephen brought up smoking. We all have our issues in life. And mine is when I'm stressed, I eat, right? It's just the way it is. I've tried since I was a little girl to change it. And it's, we all have those things in life that we're dealing with. I think that's part of being human. But I decided to go on a weekend retreat to a place that I know exists that's called the Omega Center, because they have health food and nature walks, and there's always some great course going on there. So I had this only one weekend free from my day job, and I looked on the Omega Center website, and guess what the course was that they were teaching? EVP, Electronic Voice Phenomena, course teachers Tom and Lisa Butler. I'm not kidding. This is real. If you feel guided on a mission somewhere in life, you got to follow it, because if you don't, it's going to keep knocking on your door. Some of you know that. But I listened. I was in this, I did go to the retreat, and I heard really great examples. And, the movies have us believe that these scary messages come through. That is all Hollywood. And I'm sure, my friend Robert's filming this right now. Somebody in Hollywood's going to see it and say, oh, no, she told people. But what comes through from our loved ones is messages of love and also messages of humor. No one can tell you bad stuff. They're just their personality, and they want to connect with you. They want to say hello. And so there I was, all by myself at the Omega Center in New York with my handy-dandy digital tape recorder. And the homework was to go try to get an EVP. So you got to imagine, I'm lying in my bed, a little cabin, tons of rain coming down, and I turn on my recorder, and I imagine my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunt, and my uncle standing by the foot of my bed, completely just imagining it. And I said, if you guys are here, and I'm supposed to help people believe life after death is real, I need you to talk really loud. Because most of these messages that come through are just whispers, whispers. So I let it record for just 1 minute, and then I said, good night, So I put my headphones on, and I'm listening like I'm not ever going to hear anything here. And on the second number 46 on the counter, my hairs on my body just stood on end. I had to play it back again and again and again. There were no people around me, only the sound of raindrops. And what I heard was, "Good night, Sandra," in a man's voice. Two women whisper, "Good night, good night." And then a man's voice whispers, "Good night." Oh, whew, that's heavy duty. And from that point, first of all, it scared the heck out of me. Because somebody wrote a book called "Do Dead People Watch Me in the Shower?" They did. Somebody did. A famous medium did. Yeah, so I'm thinking, I'm never alone. So as great as it was to get that, and I was thrilled to go to Tom and Lisa and say, I think I got one, it was awesome. But do they? No. I'm gonna go out on a limb and call myself a life after death expert. I've got over 100 hours of interviewing people. I've got maybe 200 recorded of these EVPs. I've never had a near-death experience myself, but I've talked to a lot of people that have. There's a lot more things about that, but after we pass away, we pass through, we go on, whatever you want to call it. Transition's a good word. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the dying process, because I don't want you to have any fear. Your fear should be about living and doing what you want before you go. Because most people, right, I interviewed a doctor, a heart surgeon, and he's done over 10,000 heart surgeries, and people, it doesn't matter who they are, they look back on the things they should have done or shouldn't have done, or they should have said or they shouldn't have said, and they all develop this belief in a higher power. Even atheists do. So you really don't want to be at the end of your life and look back and have things you did or you didn't do. So when we close our eyes for that last time, the best thing that happens is that we lose the little voice in our head. Do you guys have that little voice in your head, the one when you look in the mirror, you look terrible, you're too fat, you're just, oh my God, look at the gray hairs, is this color too dark on me? I don't know. Yeah, I got it too, and mine always tells me, I'm 50, I just turned 50, can you believe it? But I'm still single, so my voice tells me, you're going to be an old lady with a lot of cats. There's nobody coming for you. It's over. It does. It really does. And I'm making light of it now, but in those quiet moments, you know what it's like. Some of us say, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Nobody loves me. I mean, it's really hard. There's people with several doctorates and, brilliant people, but they still don't feel smart enough. So that little voice is the first thing to go. Yes. And then what happens, of course, your loved ones are there to greet you and bring you over. You have your life review, but you are surrounded by an incredible amount of love. There's so much love, they tell me, that you just can't even believe it. You see other souls and you recognize them. We might not have ever met, but I know your name. We retain a body of sorts, so we can manipulate the mind of a medium and show pictures of who we are. It's actually pretty cool. Anybody who's died of suicide, that's always a very tender subject, because you know why. I used to be very opinionated that people who committed suicide, you tried to take an easy way out. Well, hell no. I found out our servicemen and women, there's 22 suicides a day. And I tell you, they're grieving, and if I can make a difference, and that's why I wanted this video taped, because maybe this speech will help someone in the world. But anyone who's gone that way, I have very, very much compassion for now, because things must have been so tough that they couldn't go on. But I want you to know they're greeted with open arms, by love. We lose children, they're growing up in the hereafter, and you'll see them again. You will. I got all the proof I need. We will see them again. People who commit suicide have regrets because they realize that they're not gone, and they can see the pain that's still, happening in their family. But there's people there that help them through. Anyway, so fear not. Death is going to be beautiful, but there is a purpose to life. Life, from what I've learned from all the people I've interviewed and all the things I've seen, is an education for the soul. Like, if you can imagine at one point you were in heaven, living a grand existence. You know, they say heaven is all good all the time. Have you heard that? You know, you just wish for a rainbow, and there's a rainbow. Oh, you wish for harp music. There's harp music. It's all good. It's a hot fudge sundae. Yeah. But here's the problem with heaven. There's a problem with heaven, is that when you have too much of a good thing, it's not a good thing. You know, what's your favorite food? Anybody want to tell me? Pizza, pasta. If that's the only food you had to eat for eternity, would it be special? No, 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 no. You need to try different things. And so here on earth is a place where we have emotions. We have the ups, we have the downs. Our souls, we all have souls. Or rather, our souls have us. We are these really big beings. You hear people talk about auras. Well, we have a huge energy field that goes around us. We are a soul, and we have a body for this time around. But it craves experience. There's ups, there's downs, there's people we get to play with, you know, and every single person you meet and every single experience you have, you can use it for your soul to grow, right? You can say, oh, okay, I learned this experience from that. Or unfortunately, you can be a victim and be pissed off for the rest of your life, and it doesn't really serve you. So a game I always play is if something bad happens, I think, what's the lesson here for me? And it gets me kind of through it a little faster. Let me just back up one thing. We talked a little bit about, we didn't really talk about it, but reincarnation is something that I forgot to tell you. One of the many things that I learned about life after death is that there was a doctor named Ian Stevenson who studied over 2,500 children around the world, and he was actually able to document that these people existed from the children's memories. And not too many people know about that work, but if you really are interested in life after death, it's pretty cool. One of the ladies I interviewed on my radio show, her little son at the age of 4 years old kept saying, Mama, do this straight away. And he would say, instead of left and right, he'd say port and starboard. And he drew pictures of this ship that resembled the Titanic. He drew pictures, my ears are doing funny things. He drew pictures of a ship that had 4 of the smokestacks, but only smoke coming out of 3 of them. And lo and behold, she did a little research, and one of them was a dummy stack. And that's what her 4-year-old boy said. Mama, I drew it with only, with a British accent, smoke coming out of 3 because one was a dummy stack. And the older he got, the drawings keep getting better, and he could draw like the whole diagram of the inside of a ship. So reincarnation is another thing that tells me life after death is real. I know my time is getting close to the end here. So I want to just tie up with a few things. One, what can I tell you? I have a website. You can go to, if you can remember We Don't Die Radio, that's where all the episodes are housed. And I also have something on that website called the Insiders Club. And if you click on that, you can read the first several chapters of my book, because there's so much more life after death stuff I have for you. But I can't get it out in such a short time. So I want to give you that. Also, I told you about the grief audio. If you know somebody that's lost a loved one, you feel free to take one of those CDs. They'll be right outside the back table. I've got some books and stuff right outside the door. I want you to have that. And also survivegrief.com, that's where the information is. But I'm going to leave you with this thought, right? Because people say, where is heaven? How can Stephen tap into this? Like, where are they? Are they in the clouds? Nope. You know where they are? Yeah, they're right here, for anybody who didn't hear that. I had mentioned earlier about the magic of sound and the vibrations and light and energy, okay? In this hotel right now, there's wireless internet. I have not a clue how it works. But I don't have my cell phone on me, but if I did, it would be just baffling. How could my cell phone, pick up something that's happening somewhere else? Like, where is the cloud? Where is the internet? I don't know, but pictures are coming through, right? So why do we doubt that our minds can't do that? When we die, our body disappears, but our energy lives on. When a log burns, well, that log is gone, but the heat is still around. Energy can be at the same place at the same time. Like, there's sound waves going through here. There's probably definitely radio waves and television waves, and the wireless internet, this whole invisible world. And that's where our loved ones are. We can't see them, but they're here. Are they always here? No, because I think there's things to do in the hereafter, but they're only a thought away. A real trick. Oh, I didn't tell you something really cool that happened. Then I promise I'll say goodbye, or until we meet again. Last week, I went to a place in the UK called the Arthur Findlay College. Spiritualist ministers are all trained on being mediums. Where they train is in the Arthur Findlay College. I have been telling my story of that Jan, the fisherman in Denmark, for a long time. And people ask me, oh, can you see the loved ones around me? Oh, no, I never perfected that, you know. And so I wanted to know once and for all, do I have it? Or don't I? Really? Because if I do, when I'm sitting next to somebody on an airplane, I want to be able to connect, like Stephen does. So I went there, and I had 5 intensive days of learning about mediumship. And I can tell you something, I've got it, but not just me, you've got it. Okay? I believe that just like people can play the piano and be really gifted, there are people that are really gifted in mediumship. But for the rest of us, we can train to get to a certain point. Am I a Stephen Masick? I'm not. I'm a Sandra Champlain. However, there is one tool that we can all use, and this is the one single tool that they said makes your mediumship stronger, and I believe it makes our life stronger. If we can practice quieting that voice in our head, that's where the magic comes in. Because after being trained this past week, I know that, I mean, I'm not in Stephen's head, but it's like you have to actually tune out that little voice that wants to say, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough. And you have to go into that land of the imagination. People heal the best with grief, and their neurotransmitters come back up when they can learn to quiet the mind. Right? Mediums connect that way. And also, they said, if you want to improve your mediumship, get really good at quieting your mind. And something called sitting in the power, really believing that I am connected to a divine source, that we are divine beings. So anyways, I'm going to leave you with that. God, it's just so much more, and there's never time. But I want to bring Stephen back up, so I'll have to say goodbye. But I want you to just think of something. Your life here, if you can imagine, is just a thread in the fabric of your soul. And I want you each to know that you are loved. And I mean loved. You can't see it. You might not be able to feel it. You might feel alone, but you're not. You are loved. And if you practice quieting your mind a little, you might get some signs from your loved ones. Your life is for a reason. They say there are souls lined up waiting to come to planet Earth because this is where the juicy education happens. True or not? Gosh, step into your fears. Go for your dreams. Know that you can never fail, right? It's all an education for the soul. Know that you're never alone, and please know that we don't die. So I'm going to end with that, and thank you all for being here.